The next story I'm going to read for Black History Month is about Louis Armstrong, and he plays a trumpet. And it says on the inside cover, it says, "When I pick up that horn, that's all. The world's behind me, and I don't concentrate on nothing but it. I love them notes." And it's written by Lesa, Cline-Ransome, illustrated by James Ransom. Here's the the title page. Just a Lucky So-and-So, the story of Louis Armstrong. And Holiday House is the publishing company. In New Orleans, Louisiana, in a part of town outside of Storyville, tucked in a corner called Bacco Town, in a section nicknamed the Battlefield, little Louis Armstrong was born, black and poor and lucky. My whole life has been happiness. On the corner of Perdido and Liberty, little Louis lived in one room with no lights and no running water. But it was home to him and his sister, Mama Lucy, and his mama, Mayanne. The grandson of slaves, little Louis, toted laundry, hauled coal, sold newspapers, and scavenged through garbage to earn money for his family. On the streets, little Louis sometimes made his own trouble, but it was nothing his mama's sharp tongue and a switch from the china berry tree in Grandma Josephine's yard couldn't fix. I say never worry what the other fella has, as long as you're having fun in your own way. Every day, outside his window, little Louis listened up and down the streets to the music of brass bands, funeral marches, honky-tonks on Saturday nights, church services on Sunday mornings. Across the street, he peeked through the cracks of Funky Butte Hall. On cornet, the sassy ragtime music of Bunk Johnson, Buddy Bolden, and Joe Oliver followed him wherever he went. Johnson had tone, Bolden blew hard, but for little Louis it was King Oliver, who could outperform any horn player in all of New Orleans. The king of all musicians was Joe Oliver. School learning at the Fisk School for Boys began for little Louis at 7. Before school and after, on the Cornfiskie's wagon next to Morris, little Louis tooted a tin horn, penny for your rags, and bleated, nickel for your scraps. Although I could not play a good tune, Morris applauded me just the same. Through the window of a pawn shop, a cornet caught Louis's eye. A $5 loan from Morris bought the cornet for Louis. Some brass polish and oil brought the horn to life. Down Rampart Street, 4 boys harmonized, My Brazilian Beauty. Little Mac on drums, Big Nose Sidney on brass, red-headed Happy Bolton as baritone, and the gravely tenor of little Louis, the boy with a smile so wide open kids called him Satchel Mouth, Satchel Mouth. New Year's Eve in New Orleans was all music, fireworks, and midnight shots fired in celebration. Little Louis joined in with his stepfather's gun. All his scrapes with the law added up, and at 11 years, little Louis was sent away. I thought the world was coming to an end. Well, at the colored waif's home for boys, little Louis could barely eat. He missed his mama, his sister, and his cornet. Through his open windows drifted the call of the bugle. A bugle to rise, a bugle for chores, a bugle for bed. The band leader, Mr. Davis, told little Louis that boys from the battlefield don't belong in a band. Well, little Louis sang solos for everyone to hear. Mr. Davis listened and started Louis with the tambourine. Then he played the drums. Mr. Davis made him the bugler. Then he put him on the cornet. Mr. Davis made him the band leader. Me and music got married at the home. Well, at 14, little Louis returned to Perdido Street, not so little. By then, he could make any song swing. Louis needed to hear a song just once, and it was his. He worked all day hauling coal and all night playing in honky-tonks around town. Louis met Joe. As Joe paraded through town with the onward brass band and followed him everywhere, Louis ran Joe's errands, carried his horn, but in the between times, Joe taught Louis note by note. In Joe's home, Louis filled up on rice and beans and music lessons. Louis traded in his first pawn shop cornet for Joe's used one. Louis listened to Joe's horn crow like a rooster, growl like a lion, cry like a newborn baby. Two horns side by side, so close. Louis called him Papa Joe. Aboard the SS Sydney, he blew swing, waltzes, and dance tunes, all up and down the banks of the Mississippi River. On land, Louis blew with the Tuxedo Brass Band, and then Kid Ory's hottest jazz band in town, featuring Baby Dodds, Pops Foster, and his Papa Joe Oliver. When I pick up that horn, that's all. The world's behind me, and I don't concentrate on nothing but it. I love them notes. After a time, New Orleans honky-tonks were too small for the king. Joe hopped a train and blew goodbye to New Orleans. Chicago was waiting. Louis stepped in where Joe stepped out. His horn had folks talking about the little boy from the battlefield. Night after night, Louis filled up the halls, filled up the streets, filled up his pockets with the music from his cornet. 4 years later, Joe sent a telegram. Louis was ready to leave. He sent for me, and whatever he's doing, I want to do it with him. All aboard! Louis stood on the train platform, fish sandwich in one hand, cornet in the other, worried he'd catch cold in the windy city. His mama made him wear long johns in the August heat. Joe Oliver and Chicago were waiting. I'd never seen a city that big. Well, on the south side of Chicago, at the corner of 31st and Cottage Grove, Louis peeked into Lincoln Gardens Dance Hall. A globe glittered from the ceiling. A balcony looked out over the dance floor. Joe and King Oliver's Creole Jazz Band warmed up. Opening night always makes you feel as though little butterflies were running around in your stomach. Louis's tuxedo was pressed and patched and small. He walked to the bandstand where Baby and Johnny Dodds, Lil Hardin, Honoree Dirtrey, and Bill Johnson waited. From the very first note they knew, he played quietly behind Joe, softly in back of Joe, echoing after Joe. Someone yelled, "Let that youngster blow!" And Louis stepped forward and stood in front of Joe and blew. My boyhood dream had come true at last. Louis stood in front of bands in Chicago, New York, California, and Europe, on records, in Hollywood, on Broadway, and on the radio. The little boy from New Orleans, Louisiana, from a part of town outside Storyville, in a corner called Backo Town, in a section nicknamed the Battlefield, was just a lucky so-and-so. I was so happy I did not know what to do. I had hit the big time. The end.